Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to PMI's Friday webinar, Agile Improvement, Myth or Magic. Today we're joined by Sean Buckland, who's going to be presenting today's webinar. My name is Susanna Clark. I'm going to be facilitating today. So any questions that you have, please do use the Q&A or the chat just to share your questions with us. We do love to hear your questions and we will be referring to them regularly throughout today's presentation. As you can see at the top of your screens, we've also launched a brand new episode of our podcast, which is called Leading for Business Excellence. You can see this on listen to this on our Knowledge Hub on our website, and it's available on all popular podcast apps. This month, we're joined by Jo Humble. Jo is an expert in change, and she's been working in the pharma industry, doing a whole range of transformation and improvement roles. She's got some fantastic insights to share and the advice on the importance of engaging leaders in providing the mandate for improvement. So do have a listen and please do give us your feedback. So back to today, as I said, I'm going to be running the Q&A desk, and you can find the chat and the Q&A buttons on your Zoom toolbar. We're also recording today's webinar, and we will send everyone who's registered a copy of that recording early next week, and that will be a full recording of both the audio, the video, and the presentation that you're looking at today. As usual, we're broadcasting live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So for those of you who are joining us on those live streams, we do welcome you today. And in future, if you want to register for the webinar, we'll send you a recording, and then also you can participate in polls and also share your feedback. At the end of today, we're going to be sending a short voice for customer survey to everybody. As always, we're very grateful for your feedback and any suggestions that you have for future topics. So thank you all for your support. And now I'd like to hand over to Sean.
Thank you very much, Suze, and welcome everybody to Agile Improvement, Myth or Magic. And it's Friday afternoon, so we'll try and keep this agile. I'm sure you're keen to get on with your weekends. So let's crack on. So here we go. So we're going to cover three main things today around Agile project management. And one is, does it apply to Lean Six Sigma projects too? Is it something we can use to help us with our Lean Six Sigma projects? Then looking at it from a slightly different point, looking at some of the myths around this, is Agile project management something usefully different, or is it just PDSA, or some people use PDCA in a fancy modern dressed up costume? Is it the same thing again, or is it something different? And then, assuming it is something different, it has something different to offer, what magic tricks does Agile have that can help accelerate our improvement projects? I think the fact we have point 3 gives a clue to the answer to point 2. So let's, as I say, Sue said, keep the questions coming. So you keep me on my toes. By all means, ask questions as we go. Suze can just drop in if there's any key questions that she wants me to pick up as we go along. And obviously, that makes it a lot more interesting for all of us if we can make it interactive as well. So let's pile into the first thing. As always, we like to get a little bit of audience participation in these exercises. And in this particular one, I'm very interested to know the knowledge base of those of you who are listening in today. So what is your current experience of Agile? And if you have specific experience of Agile project management. So answer number 1, you're brand new to it. Number 2, you maybe understand the basics, but it's not something you actually do yourself. Number 3, you're using Agile, but it's only in a software development space, and it's not necessarily working as well as the hype out there. Number 4, we're using it in software development and it's working great for you, but it's not used elsewhere. And the 5th one, you're using the Agile project management method outside of software development itself. So the poll is now live. Thank you very much, Suze, and I look forward to seeing your scores.
So yes, that poll's been launched. So please have a look, choose the answer that most fits where you think you are. be interesting to understand a little bit more about our audience. So that's really great. And if you're watching on the live streams, put comments in. I'm happy to take any questions as well through the live stream comment box. So please do share those. Okay, I'm just going to give that another few seconds and then I will share the results on our screen. Thank you, everybody. So you should be able to see that. So we've got a range of, we've got 17% who are new to it, 67% understand the basics, and 17% who use Agile, but for software development only, and they use it effectively, which is always good to know.
That is absolutely brilliant. Okay, so we've got a goodly mix in the room with us today, but for the bulk of people, the sort of 2/3, more than 2/3, it's so the 80% really when we add it together, it's a relatively new thing. It's not something people have experience of. In that sense, what I'll do is I'll keep some of the elements here today really sort of introductory level to make sure that I'm not using too many terms or jumping around the place too much in terms of what to expect it can do. I'll just try and keep things quite straightforward. And obviously for those of you who have got experience of using Agile in more detail, you know, by all means share your own knowledge and experience, which we can then pass on as we go along. If there might be something I say you've got a different view on or something like that, that's absolutely brilliant. More views the better.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for that. That's really helpful to get me started. Okay, so I'm just going to a little cautionary note. It's almost like a disclaimer up front, and I want to talk about the concept of tools and leverage, because we have this situation where things like Lean, Six Sigma, Agile, they all exist as ecosystems, if you like, for creating change, and within them all there is a set of tools that we use. So we're not really so we use the tools to create leverage on the changes we're trying to create. So you may or may not be familiar with this. This is one of the Archimedes principles. Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum in which to place it, and I will move the world. Really, really interesting piece of theoretical physics, that is, and it's very, very useful for us to think about. So when we're developing these methods, what we're doing is we're saying we want to improve our leverage on a particular problem we're trying to solve, or a particular change we're trying to implement, or an innovation we're trying to create, and work out how to solve. So we're using the tools to give us the leverage. And that's what I want you to think about today is the power of leverage. How can we use Agile project management to give us more leverage within our Lean and Six Sigma interventions and our continuous improvement work? And of course, the principle cuts both ways. The more powerful the tool, the more careful we need to be, and the more skills we need in order to use it effectively. We don't want to be like the ball cane driver here, who's tried to lever beyond the limits of the system, and of course the system will always win. So that's what we need to bear in mind. So this, as we become more and more powerful, we can be more and more effective at doing the wrong things if we don't keep our focus in the right place. And we'll talk about that as we go through. Okay, so disclaimers out the way, onto the first key learning point for this webinar, and that is looking at Agile. And we're looking at it from the point of view of, I'm going to cover some of the basic principles for those of you who are new to it, or have only got some introductory knowledge around it, just to make sure we're all on the same page, and then start stretching that to say, what about Agile outside of the software development box? Because most, if not all of you, are aware that Agile is traditionally, I say traditionally, it's only been around for just over 20 years, but it's as a formal recognized approach, but it has grown up out of the software development community. So we're going to go back to the original developing community and use their words to help us run this event today. So Can't remember, there's a long list of names. It's easy enough to check online. The website is still live. A group of people got together from all around the world and set themselves up a conference because they intuitively felt the way that they were working in their companies developing software was just not the best way to do it. And they came together to work out what are the principles by which they felt software should be developed. And they ended up at the end of this conference creating this thing called the Agile MANIFESTO. And that's where the name Agile comes from. It comes straight out of this conference that was run, I think it was before 2000. I can't remember the exact date off the top of my head. Anyway, when you receive the slides, etc., the link is there. It's easy enough to look up for yourselves. But there's some interesting words here. We are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Through this work, we have come to value. And this is what I want to talk about. It's a very values-driven approach, just like effective Lean Six Sigma is very values-driven. And these were the four things. Individuals and interactions. We value individuals and interactions between them over processes and tools. A very, very interesting point. And again, especially Lean, Six Sigma in the early days was a bit less good on this point, but certainly going back to the heart of Lean, absolutely that's the process we're interested in there as well, is how do we get people to work together. The second one, we want working software over comprehensive documentation. In other words, we don't want to just dump something on people and say, read the manual. We want to actually make sure the software actually works for people rather than blaming them for not having understood the manual. Third one, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Really, really powerful one. Customer collaboration. And again, this is a key Lean Six Sigma principle. Again, we want to work there directly with voice of the customer, working collaboratively with customers and suppliers in order to get the best possible extended value chain that we can possibly derive. So again, lot in common there. And then the fourth one, responding to change over following the plan. And here there's the concept here is that we need to make sure that we are doing what is needed for the business and for its customers, rather than setting a hard and fast plan, and that becomes the goal is to implement the plan. So a lot in common with Lean. The one that varies is the concept of the working software, because again, go back to the fundamental Lean principles. What we're interested there is slightly different. It's talking about only using technology that's been thoroughly tried and tested and proven and so forth. So there's a slightly different attitude going on there. But if we were to take away the working software and replace with delivery of value over comprehensive documentation of processes and standard operating procedures, then we'd be back on the same page together. So at this point in time, Lean and Agile are looking extremely similar in terms of their underlying values. And again, there's a key point that they make in the manifesto, and that is, whilst the items on the right, processes, tools, documentation, contract, plans, they're all valuable, the things that we value more are the things on the left, the individuals, the value creation, the collaboration, the responsiveness. So if you've not seen that before, hopefully that gives you a good insight into the driving principles of this thing called Agile. Now, moving slightly on to the concept of Agile project management, which is developed more later, because what people noticed within Agile is there were several times where it was not being used, not just for software development in the sort of continuous improvement sense, software development, but it was also being used for launching brand new products and so on and so forth. And they realized that Agile, the project management, traditional project management had to work in a different way, because it didn't fit with Agile, because there weren't specific work packages to sit in there. So eventually the methodology of Agile project management started to be formed. And it had a number of core principles, these 8 that you see in front of us. And 4 of them I've left in white, just to say these are, you could argue these apply for any type of project management methodology, in much the same way. We want to be in control of what's happening. We want to deliver on time. We want to effectively communicate. We want to make sure we deliver what we've promised. So those kind of things, I'm just going to, for the moment, take as read, although those of you more experienced in Agile will know that, in fact, there are some important differences in how those things are done. But what I do want to do is focus on the 4 orange balls, the other 4 principles, because I think those are the ones that give us some really juicy information that we can work with today. Number 1, the focus on value. So the key thing about a project that is using the Agile project management methodology is it's the end value that is going to be delivered through the eyes of the end user or the end customer, depending on the nature of the project. And to do that, we need to collaborate. And that is a very, very different concept. Traditional project management splits things into work packages. Everybody goes off and does their individual bit, delivers, hands over to the next person. The APM approach is based around the principle of collaboration, joint working, sitting together to get the job done. That is a fundamentally different thing to think about. And with that, develop iteratively. In other words, we don't know the answer in advance. We're going to work together collaboratively, focusing on value, and work our way towards what's going to be best for us. And in order to do that, we then need to build incrementally, one bit at a time, until eventually we get the whole thing to work for us. And it's those 4 things that I think give us some really interesting insights into how APM can be useful to us in our Lean Six Sigma world as well. Although obviously many of you on the call will already be very experienced Lean Six Sigma practitioners and so on, you'll realize that there's not much in there that you would say, hey, that's news. So at this point, again, APM and the Lean Six Sigma approach seem to have an awful lot in common. So sorry for lots of words. Just take a screenshot of this if it's useful for you. Drop it into your favorite note-taking software. But I want to just talk you through some of the key differences and principles. This is largely for those who are less familiar with Agile, just so that we can see so you can see how the relationships build up. So I've got 2 columns, projects that are not software projects and columns where there are software projects. But obviously in today's world, as we become more and more digital, the amount of not software projects and the boundary between these things is blurring more and more, because we often do need to include software development as part of our change process. So I'm just going to quickly flick through these. So the first one, critical path. The traditional project management method is sometimes known as critical path methodology. And again, it's entirely rational and logical, and great stuff if you can get it to work. And it's particularly useful if you know what you're trying to do, you've got known inputs, you've got a good knowledge of how long it takes to turn those inputs into outputs. So we're building a standard house from a tested design. Bang. The only thing that we don't know exactly is how the weather's going to impact us. And so we deal with that with contingency and so on. And yet, miraculously, despite all of those benefits, that particular methodology is prone to something called padding of contingency. So how long will it take? Probably 2 days. So what will I tell the project manager? Probably 4. And somehow it manages then to take 4, maybe 5. And then the result of that is we end up with cost and time overruns and disconnects. And I'm sure we've all seen that many times. In the software world, their equivalent was the waterfall methodology, known as waterfall because you set the requirements and then you do the technical design, then you do the user design, and then do the testing phase, and then you do implementation phase. So the idea is it's a waterfall, much like a Gantt chart on a traditional project looks like a waterfall. And again, very similarly, it's very well suited for if we know exactly what the user needs, we know what the inputs are, we've got good knowledge of how long it's going to take to install it. So in the good old days where you used to go to PC World, buy the software out of a box, go home, take the disk out, put it into your computer, install it, or I've now got the latest version of Office on my computer. That's an example of a very small, very tiny example of a software change program where all of those conditions are well met. But of course, if we're trying to build something new that's never been built before, which most software development these days is, then it suffers in exactly the same way as the critical path. Prone to poor fit, the end result is not often what's wanted, because specifications weren't right in the first place, big change control in order to fix it all, and then significant cost and time overruns. So I'm sure we've all experienced both of those. So on the other side of things, we have these two things, Six Sigma and Agile. Now, I'm mentioning Six Sigma here specifically because technically Lean is not a project management methodology, whereas Six Sigma was originally designed to be a project management methodology. So that's why it only says Six Sigma there. And that Six Sigma is really, really good when we don't have the answers up front. We don't have a pre-existing tested solution. We may not even know, or probably don't even know, what the root causes are of the problem we're yet to solve. And therefore, the project is filled with unknowns. We don't know what the issues are. We don't know what we're going to have to do to fix them. We don't know pretty much anything other than the fact we don't like the result we're currently getting. But this methodology has fallen foul in many, not all, but many organizations, because it's suddenly been, people are expected to just go on the Greenbelt training and that's it. You're now expected to solve loads of problems, but you're given no extra time for it. It's lacking that systematic project discipline. We often train against that. We try and solve that problem in our training and set things up properly. But unfortunately, in our experience, more often than not, people want to shortcut. The sponsorship's not there, and so on. They're trying to shortcut the shortcut, and of course, they end up just falling in the mud. And therefore, what we often see with our Six Sigma projects is we're not getting the best out of the results, and that then leads to management frustration, even though they're a significant part of the cause of the problem through the sponsorship issues. We then see management losing faith in the Six Sigma methodology, and we move back into just quick fix mode and constantly stirring the stew. And likewise, we have the Agile situation. Now, interestingly, this has grown up, maybe it's something about software development teams and being relatively unmanageable in the first place. I don't know. Sorry, forgive me. I mean, that was meant to be a joke. So, but here's the interesting thing: it seems to have achieved more traction more successfully in business operations or IT operations. And the reason I'm not entirely sure of it here, but again, we start with it in the same situation, same basis. We've got a problem to be solved. We don't have a known set of user requirements at the other end. We don't even necessarily know exactly what the problem is that the customer is trying to solve. But we get ahead and we push forward and we work our way through it until eventually we have software to working for us. And maybe it's something about the fact that with software you can actually see the progress. We can actually test that line of coding and see whether or not it works for us or not. It lends itself to that. But what I have seen on the downside of the Agile, and by the way, it says Scrum and Kanban there because it's not detail for today, but there are various different branches of Agile beginning to appear, and some of them, sometimes they go down the Scrum route, sometimes down the Kanban route, etc. That's not important for today, but I just want to recognize the fact there's more than one methodology that's called Agile out there already. Anyway, the crucial thing here is what I've seen happen is a number of software development teams, IT teams, get to the point where they say they're Agile, they've put some of the trappings of Agile in place, but in fact, what they've got is just a series of very short waterfall projects. They've lost the collaboration principle. They've lost the focus on value principle. They've lost the iterate. All they've got is just lots and lots of mini rollouts going on. And I think that's really sad. In the same way, I think it's very, very sad that a lot of the Six Sigma work is being lost. So I just wanted to mention there is no such thing as a perfect project management methodology. They all have problems. They're all suited for slightly different situations. But the key question for this afternoon is this: is there anything about the success that Agile has achieved in right across the world now, faster and inarguably more powerfully than Lean Six Sigma, which has taken a very long time, and there's still a lot of companies are still just at the starting point with it. So the question is there anything we can learn here, those of us who work in the Lean Six Sigma community? So that's what we're trying to solve this afternoon. So first of all, we're going to pick up, is Agile just Lean Six Sigma for software projects? So this is one of the big myths I want to put to bed one way or another, because initially, as I've gone through already with the principles, is you can see there is an awful lot of overlap in terms of the underlying principles. And then which tools you use kind of don't matter. The thing is what are you trying to achieve? Now, again, forgive the incredibly wordy slide. Do just take a screenshot of it for later. But on the left-hand side, again, taken from the Agile Manifesto website, are the Agile principles. And what I did is I went through them, and on the right-hand side, what I've got is my view of how that fits with Lean Six Sigma and the continuous improvement world. And if we look at the first one, our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. Now, if we take out the software, valuable software, and replace that with improving value through the continuous removal of root causes of failure in the system, then we would see that the central principle in Lean is the same one. It's one of the core central principles there. And likewise, on the second one, don't worry, I won't go through every single one of them. I just want to illustrate some points here. So if we look at this one, welcome changing requirements, even late in development. So Agile processes harness change from the customer's competitive advantage. Now that's our linking with Plan, Do, Study, Act. So those of us following the Lean Six Sigma principles properly, we understand that we don't come up with one solution, we come up with a series of theories and we test our way through until we found the best way to solve everything that we're trying to solve. So again, huge overlap there in terms of how we design our method for approach. Now I want to come back to that one. And then I'm just going to pick on the third one here just to illustrate again the same point, but from a slightly different angle. So here is deliver working software frequently from a couple of weeks to a couple of months with a preference to the shorter time scale. Now that I would call a design principle, as in it's a principle about how we design the rollout of findings. And my experience of Lean Six Sigma is it ought to follow that design principle, but it doesn't always manage it. Sometimes we end up with projects lasting 12, 18 months, hidden away in darkened rooms and so forth, or even just being dumped on somebody's desk just because they happen to have a belt qualification of some color. And so what I want to say here is that I think this is one of the areas where Lean Six Sigma in many, not all, but many organizations has lost the plot a little bit, maybe missed a trick or three. Because what's in today's world, our management teams, they're working at paces that means they recognize and reward pace. And we know that that pace is often part of why the problems are there in the first place, because they don't take the stop and take the time to think carefully enough before they make changes. But if the solution to that feels unacceptable to them, then maybe we need to find a way to work with them in their space. And this is what I'm leading to. I think that's a really interesting design principle. And you could do the same thing. You can reach your own same or different conclusions to me going all the way through these. But I think what basically there's pretty much a key match over on every single Agile principle to every single to Lean Six Sigma principles. I didn't find any difficulty at all finding correlations. But the one I want to come back to is this one here, is the welcoming changing requirements even late in development, because that's the one that has a very interesting link with us, because while we're working with root causes, we could be several weeks or even several months into a project before we've identified exactly what it is we're trying to fix. And the Agile project management process, can that help us then to accelerate the pace of change in the organization? So hopefully this all makes some sense so far. Again, ping us with any questions or comments as we go. Susan, and anything, any reflections from yourself at this point? Just give people a break from my voice for a few seconds.
So I think I found this really interesting because I hadn't gone back as you have to that manifesto. And I think some of your earlier comments about talking to people who are running Agile projects, I haven't been as aware of all of these principles. So I think that's a really interesting lesson to learn. And And of course, couldn't agree more with your assessment in the right-hand column. What I found interesting recently was, so last week, a client contacted me. They have a new transformation program that they're launching. They're launching it in their IT division. And they contacted me specifically to talk about this transformation program, which is called an Agile Lean Transformation. And so that's the first time for me that I'd heard a client putting those two together in a title to say, actually, we want the principles of both in that alignment. And of course, I laughed and said, why don't you come along to the webinar?
Well, hello, if you're with us. Right, we can pick up afterwards about how it lands for you.
Yeah, well, I'll let you know as well.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks, Suze. Thank you, Suze. That's really great. Okay, so back on track then. So I've used this expression PDSA. I appreciate there may be some people on the call who are not necessarily familiar with it. That's absolutely fine. And as they sometimes is known as Plan, Do, Check Act as well. But we call it Plan, Do, Study Act. That's not a conversation for now. Right, so what do we mean by this? Is we start by studying. So this is in the world of Lean Six Sigma. I'm not talking about Agile at the moment. I'm talking purely world of Lean Six Sigma here. What we do is we start by saying, who's the customer of this value stream? What are the processes, the direct delivery processes, the value creating ones, in other words, supply processes, storage processes, management processes, IT policies, financial systems, all of that stuff that makes up the system of delivering value. We go and study that and get some data. This is the scale of the problem. 20% of the boxes are arriving late, and so on. And from that, we form our initial theories that we're going to about what we want to change. And then we build our plans in the form of what we're trying to accomplish. How will we know if that's going to be an improvement? We make the prediction. Remember, Plan, Do, Study, Act is the operational application of science into business change. So we want to make predictions before we make changes. We can then run our tests, collect some data. We're now into our study number one. What's the study telling us versus our prediction? And I think this is something that if we're following Lean Six Sigma properly, ultimately gives us our power base, because it means that fundamentally we can learn our way to success against any complexity problem, which is a very, very powerful and enabling thing to happen. And of course, from our results, we will get a result, and we need to act on that result. And that act, we have three fundamental choices. We say, the theory seems to work, so we shall adopt it into our working practice. Adapt it. In this situation, the theory worked, but maybe not in exactly the way we wanted, or not as well as we hoped for, or it only accounted for half of the variation we thought it was going to. So we need to go back and do some more thinking, but at least we've got better understanding of the system now. And ultimately, the result we don't want, and that is our theory was completely wrong. It's either had no effect at all, or worse still, it's made things worse. In either way, however, we've got the ability to learn some more, go back forward. This is the variation we still got in the system. These are the defects we still got in the processes, and so on. And we use it as a basis for more theories, and then set up our new predictions, new tests, and carry on until eventually we are issue free, not something that we have to worry about in the short term. Okay, so that's what we mean by Plan, Do, Study, Act. Now, the interesting thing about this, just stealing a phrase from Lean Startup methodology for a moment, and that is fastest learner wins, because this is fundamentally a learning process. And the faster we can spin that cycle in the middle is the faster we can learn. And I think it has a very interesting direct correlation with the Agile project management methodology, because the Agile project management methodology is all about short sprints, for one of the expressions that's used a lot in Agile, short sprints to get something built. And I would say that the equivalent here is short sprints to get something learned. And that's a really, really interesting thing to think about. So rather than just trying to fit the changes into as and when I've got some spare time, what is right by the end of this week, what do we need to have good learning about? I think that's useful for us. And therefore, what I'm actually saying is the Agile project management methodology, I think, is going to help us most in these phases of the improvement cycle overall. So what we have here is the improvement cycle in total. We've got plan, do, study, act, driving every aspect of it. And then within that, we've got the standard DMAIC that most people are familiar with: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control, the 5 phases of a Six Sigma project. And around the outside, we have the PMI improvement cycle, where we put in the detail of what the purpose of each of the phases is. And you can see that the improve phase, we've split into 3 different sections. And I think this could be quite useful. This is where I think the Agile project management methodology would be especially valuable, because it's in this phase where we're looking to get really good results, because we might have had to spend several weeks or even months going through the measure analyze phase, by which point the management team are getting very frustrated very often. So what we therefore want to do is turn that into benefit as quickly as possible. So therefore, we need to test our theories as quickly as possible. We need to study the results as quickly as possible. And then we need to take our learning, including the change management aspect of it, and implement it as quickly as possible. So this is where I think Agile project management has the edge on traditional Lean Six Sigma interventions. Now, I'm not saying there's anything different in terms of the goals. I'm just saying there may be some tools, some leverage here that that we can borrow back from Agile to help us. So let's move on then into some of the magic. So I think they aren't the same thing. I think they are slightly different things, but they're coming very much from the same stable. So let's look at one of the bits that makes Agile and Agile project management quite magical, and let's see if we can borrow that particular trick back. So now again, for those of you who've got some experience, by all means, just jump it into any comments, etc. if you think I'm missing anything crucial here. But I've just picked up on some of the more obvious things, the things that people will read about very quickly if they start doing research into Agile. And that's, for example, the tool of the user story is one of the key features of an Agile approach. And I'll define these in a moment. And the daily stand-up, or weekly in some of the more lower priority projects. The formalization of the collaboration in terms of the key people working together to do the designs. Time boxing and this thing called the Kanban board. Again, like I say, I'm beginning to go into the different variants of Agile here, but there's slightly different ways of managing this. But the crucial thing here is the fact that we've got this mechanism, and I'm going to go into this mechanism in more detail shortly. We've got this mechanism for managing the differences, what we're doing over a very short period of time. And I'm sure there's many others as well, but these are the 4 I want to just pick up on right now. So I mentioned in the slide before, just jump back again, this Kanban board and time boxing, which is how we manage the work and what we're going to do next. And I also mentioned user stories, the daily stand-up, formalized collaboration. So let's have a quick look at how all of those work together in a very crude summary sense. Again, you can see plenty of examples of this online with your own research. So what the standard approach, a typical summary of the standard approach is, we start with a product backlog. And the idea of the product backlog is all the different things we need to get done in the project that we're currently aware of. And we frame them in the form of user stories. And that user story comes across as something like this. As a frontline call center operative, I need to be able to log a service request in under 2 minutes using only one system without needing more than 2 minutes of training, something like that, in how to use that screen. So it's some kind of user-centered story. I think that's a really powerful thing for us to bear in mind, because the project then is broken down and defined in terms of the value it's going to give to people, and that's a really nice thing to work with. And I think it's very often one of the challenges for Lean Six Sigma is we're focusing on the negative stuff, you know, the defect rates and delays and so forth. That won't go away, but let's learn to frame us things positively. As a call center operative, I need to be able to learn how to use the software in under 2 minutes. Is a great way, a great positive framing. Anyway, we then have our in progress board where we take the user stories and we select which ones we're going to work on in the next time box or the next sprint that we're going to run, and we move them across and they become in progress. And then the team is getting together, they're working collaboratively, the developer with the end users and other experts as required. Again, this is sadly one of the bits I see going wrong a lot. People tend to just work individually. The developer just gets on, they haven't got time to talk to people, and that's one of the issues that's still out there. But again, following the rule book, then they would be working together collaboratively to develop solutions to these user stories. And the beauty of it is managing our capacity, because everybody's super busy, but we're not taking more into the in progress box than we're able to handle. Once we've achieved something that the end customer is saying it looks like it's what they want, then it can go into review, testing, security, IT issues, all those kind of things. It can be reviewed, properly reviewed and thoroughly tested. And of course, once accepted, they can count as completed. Now, if we have capacity to deal with an average of 4 user stories every 2 weeks or something like that, then it means the business is experiencing improvement, 4 bits of improvement every 2 weeks. That, I think, is part of the magic of Agile project management methodology. And it's all using, ironically, the visual management techniques taken directly from Lean. So let's borrow it back, shall we? Let's bring it back home. Suze, did you want to jump in there?
Well, I was about to say exactly that. I mean, you know, what's fantastic about this is that this is the visual management that, you know, we know, that we're familiar with, that we know makes an enormous difference to teams. Yeah. To understand what's going on, and this is using the same. It just brings these two methods really close together, doesn't it? I also love the whole fact around this user story, which is, you know, we would call voice the customer, perhaps.
Yeah. But because it's broken down to that micro level activity, you know, as a so-and-so, I need to be able to X. It means that it's also the voice of the operator, it's voice of the finance team, it's the voice of the, you know, and the voice of the supplier. All of those are important parts of the change process. And it means that we're paying that listening attention that gives us such an edge. And it takes voice of the customer and it breaks it down. Instead of what's the value of the value stream, it becomes what are the specific capabilities that I need your help with improving. And I think that's really quite magical, personally.
I think you're right. I agree. Thank you.
So let's bring it all back again. Let's steal it back and let's see what we could do for a Lean Six Sigma project using this magic. Can we turn this magic into our own? And here's my theory for you. And obviously, really, really welcome your feedback, your comments, and you know, this is something that we think is going to be very, very powerful. And we just, you know, obviously love to hear from you and if you get to use it and how you find it. So what I've done is I've created a backlog here of the common cause root causes. So in other words, we're running a green or a black belt project and we've done the initial streamlining, the stabilizing, we've removed the main assignable causes. What's left with is a bunch of common cause variation that is giving us a daily and weekly headache. So we set up our project, we do the measure, the analyze phases, and we've got at the end of that some very detailed understanding of our root causes. By the way, if done properly, please see earlier webinars for comments about ineffective use of root cause analysis. But no, let's assume these are genuine root causes. And therefore, what we actually have in our project, as a matter of fact, is a backlog of root causes in the system we need to eliminate, because we know that if we eliminate the root causes successfully and sustainably, the problems we're looking to solve will go away. So we have now defined the implementation phase of the project in terms of the elimination, the proven sustainable elimination of root causes. So there's our backlog, really clear and simple. The project is still live while those root causes exist, and therefore we can't get away with just putting quick fixes in. We then select which of the root causes we're going to work on first, because there may be many root causes within any given value stream that need to be addressed in order to get rid of all of the unhelpful variation that we're trying to eliminate. So we'll prioritize this one or two root causes we're going to fix first. And again, we've got the power of the visual management system to communicate with our managers. These are the issues we're going to deal with first. This is why we're going to deal with them first. And yes, the others are important, but they're not the ones we're going to deal with first, thus helping us deal with the issue of people wanting everything by yesterday. And then what we could do is we can run our idea generation techniques and so forth, get loads of different ideas about what we could do, and we can then prioritize those into a set of solutions, ideas that we wish to test. So we've created a new backlog now, and this is the backlog of solutions to test. But the logic here is slightly different, because once we've found a solution that works, all the other solutions for that same root cause are no longer needed. We can actually strip them off as solutions we never needed to test, because we've already found a better way of eliminating the root cause. So that's the crucial thing here. So this now becomes the working backlog for the team for its current set of sprints. And of course, the idea is the same thing. What can we test within the next 2 weeks? Because with every 2 weeks, we want to be finding out whether or not we have actually eliminated a root cause, or whether or not we've learned some stuff that will help us to eliminate it. And that's the progress we're looking to make. So we have our current time box. We select from those which trials we're going to run in the next, as I say, typically 2 weeks. And there it is. We run those trials. And from those trials, we've completed them. Now, again, this is slightly different, unlike in software development, where there's a product that we can either say is working or not. With our trials, as I mentioned, the ACT phase, we have the 3 A's: adopt, adapt, or abandon. So if we adopt it, fantastic, test results successful, lessons learned are these. Do we believe the root cause is going to be resolved with it? Yes, we do. Good, we're going to implement that into the live operation. The business feels progress and success. Or adapt and abandon, then obviously we update our mini, it's not quite a user story, our trial story, and with what we've learned, and we put it back into the backlog of solutions to be tested, or select the next one in the case of abandon. Until eventually, of course, we have a series of implemented solutions. We've got the list of what we've learned from it, how it's improved our performance, our results measures, our process measures, and so forth. But in the whole time, the business and the management team can see, where are we up to? How many root causes have we eliminated? How many have we still got to go? What solutions are we working towards right now? And what have we managed to achieve with the ones we've already implemented? And I think this will go an awful long way to helping build that confidence in Lean and Six Sigma that's missing in, sadly, far too many organizations, because they will see that linkage between problem and solution cycling much, much faster. So there's our theory. Look forward to hearing from you either shortly or in if you get to test this out for each of your green and black belt projects. But hopefully that would be really, really useful for you.
And Sean, I was going to say, well, this doesn't have, so some of our clients, they have a very, very formal, centralized, lean, continuous improvement team, where you could imagine absolutely this sort of visual representation being present, but it doesn't have to be, does it? At the local level, for anybody who's doing any improvement, having this available not only helps them to keep their eye on progress, but means that everyone locally around them can be engaged in it. As you say, the leaders can see it. So it's completely universal application of this, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. Yes, Suze. I hope you're right. I really do. I believe you're right, but I hope on behalf of everybody else, I hope you're right. So we're talking about magic. We also want to talk about illusions briefly. So I'm just going to show you this for 2 minutes, and then we'll sum up. There we go. Let's get rid of my highlighter, and there we go.
How's he doing this? What? Shut up, man!
So incredible, powerful illusions. But notice at the end of the day, we've got the question of what can we pull out of our box, and oh, yeah, it's magic. It's not illusion at all. It's genuine magic. That's fine. So I just want to sum up here is the Agile Manifesto. Yeah, it's 20 or so years old now, but it created a significant shift in the focus on customer value and engagement for software development, and we're all so much the better for that. It's transforming the world left, right, and center. So there's no doubt about it in my mind. It is a genuinely magic thing. No illusion about it at all. Agile project management and Lean Six Sigma are both project management methodologies that work very, very well when applied correctly. Technically, you do not necessarily need to merge them or use them. They work both individually perfectly well. They're both especially useful to use when it's not clear in advance what it is you're trying to do or what problem you're trying to solve. But what I've tried to argue today is that the APM method gives us a structure within our structure to improve our adherence to PDSA. It makes it more likely we will get the benefit from our Lean Six Sigma approach because it makes it easier and more powerful to follow PDSA. And that means we will accelerate the pace we can adopt the solutions to root causes, and that will give us an awful lot of leverage that I think we're currently missing sometimes. If we take back the Kanban board from Agile and adapt it to our own needs, which is slightly different, we're not trying to implement user stories, we're trying to eliminate root causes, then what we have got is a visual management method that allows us to systematically identify the root causes in a clear way for everybody to see, and which solutions we're going to be testing next. And obviously it gives us our result tracking as well. And I think that's a very, very powerful thing. So whilst the results might be magic, just to cheer Mark up on the questions and answers here, it is absolutely not an illusion. So thank you very much for your time and inputs today. And we will absolutely right. It is crucial that we spend the time focusing the correct root causes. And as I mentioned, I've done some earlier work on that in an earlier webinar about how to help do that. So thank you very much for your attention today. I'll pass you back to Suze to see us out.
Thank you, Sean. That's brilliant. And I found that all completely fascinating, and I've learnt loads, and I really appreciate the work that you've done with taking us back to the original manifesto. I thought was fascinating. Thank you again. So just on your screens, just a reminder about our latest podcast with Joe Humble. Please do have a listen. You can find it on our Knowledge Hub at pmi.co.uk. And look out for our Voice the Customer survey. You're going to be receiving that shortly from us. I've been working hard lately through all of your feedback, and I'm working on next year's schedule, incorporating the topics that you'd like to see. So that brings us to the end of today's webinar. You can see that we've got 2 more left for the end of this year. PDSA, Sean's talked a bit about that today. Des Kelly's going to be covering that in depth next week. And again, PDSA has been a topic that has been asked, we've been asked about again and again. So I hope you will find that useful. And then our last webinar of the year will be Sean talking about why Toyota consultants struggle to implement change outside Toyota. And I'm looking forward to that too. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. I do wish you a very safe and a very healthy weekend. All the best. Thank you.